Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Well, Evan asked for a couch. We got him a couch.
I'm not even on the couch.
Evan's not even sitting on the couch. I'm just going to say this right off the hop. We were debating whether to just ignore the fact that we're in a new studio, half-built new studio, or just go a bunch of the episode before to see how long it would take for the audio-only listeners to notice, and the video listeners would be like, where the hell are they? But we're in a new studio. It's in the middle of a move. Mel and I moved. And as Brad and Evan got the tour today, the house is still mostly boxes. And this studio was set up 30 seconds ago.
About that.
Yeah. So we're going to sound different. It's going to sound worse. We're going to look different. It's going to look worse. But that's just because we're still actually building the studio part. But after a decade, another move for the Winged Wheel Podcast, and the chairs are gone.
That's the greatest one of all.
I know. Yeah. Actually, you do look like you have in our ad hoc setup, you do have the most comfortable setup of the three of us so far.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's just because I haven't got my lean on yet. There's some options here.
Well, I'll get you a cup after. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Apologies for how wild and different and off things are going to sound today. Hopefully by the time it reaches your ears and your eyes, the audio corrections were made so that this show is listenable, or at least the listenable part is the audio quality, and our terrible, terrible opinions are going to remain the same. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, what are we talking about? Who knows? Don't have show notes in front of me because this is all by the seat of our pants. We're going to be talking about the Detroit Red Wings pick that's upcoming, what Yzerman's options are, and we are going to have the trade conversation, and then we're going to feed into a conversation about a target that the Red Wings could potentially look at. He'll be a popular one around the league, but Marco Rossi, could he be a top six solution, and could that be an answer as to what to do with that 13th overall pick? We're going to be getting into NHL news. The Stanley Cup Finals continue to deliver, and then we're going to get into our prospect profile for this episode. It is another one of Brad's favorites, TM. All of that and lots more before we jump into overtime. First, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, allow us to finish building the studio, allow us to do everything that we do in the show. You get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. They're a great time. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game in season directly to our Patreon supporters. And in the offseason, we have quite a bit coming. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. The offseason isn't easy for content ever, but we still do it. 1, because we're sick, and 2, because it kind of is easy for content because we're having the same conversations year in and year out. So I'm not going to pretend the listener or the viewer is stupid here by saying this is a novel concept, but it is a concept that feels more real this year. Do you trade the first round pick if you're the Red Wings? In years past, when you had the 4th overall, the 6th overall, later than that, it didn't really make a ton of sense, especially where the Red Wings were positioned. But this year, when they did almost as well as 2 teams that made the playoffs and got bounced in the first round, you can smell it. Do you trade 13th overall?
If it wasn't for the new studio, there's nothing that would separate this from the last 8 years of this podcast.
I think that's why we pulled the trigger on the move. We were like, you know what? Brad, Evan, and I might all go through the window at the same time at the old house. If you looked out the window here, much higher. There it is. We will not survive that jump.
No, that's good. I don't want to limp away from that
wreck. This is not an accessible house, man. And we're not on the first floor.
So this is going to shock nobody with me giving this specific answer to that specific question. It depends. What are you getting for it? Are you getting if you're trading 13th overall, it goes without saying, you're getting a very good player as the centerpiece of whatever trade that would be. But what's the contract status? What's the age? What's the position? Someone in that, we'll call it DeBrincat, Larkin, age, contract, skill tier, I'm not trading that pick for. Just because I think it's becoming incredibly clear year after year that that's not the core the Red Wings should be building around. It's the Edvinsson, Raymond, age bracket, Seider, et cetera, et cetera. If you have a couple older veterans, early, mid-30s, who are not at their prime but still contribute, you need a few of those around. And Larkin and DeBrincat could absolutely be those guys. They'll probably sign another 12 of them in free agency, but either way, they'll have it. 13th overall is not guaranteed to give you a star-level player. It's actually likely that it's not going to be a star-level player. But there's a solid bet. It's a useful, contributing top 6, top 4. But the benefit of taking on the risk of making the pick versus trading it is the cost control. You're getting 3 years of an entry-level contract. Then, depending where you're at in your contention window, there could be value to a bridge deal. There could be value to a long-term deal. They're both on the table, and that even furthers your cost control. So, all that versus trading for a guy who's already making, call it $8.5 million to $11 million right now. You don't get that cheap entry level when you might need it, or cheap bridge deal when you might need it. There's also the 1 in a million chance. Oh no, this guy's actually really damn good. Like Larkin was a 15th overall pick.
Yeah.
Pastrnak was in the 20s. They're not common, and you should never expect it, but you have to keep that in the back of your mind as but there's a chance. So as much as I like a guy like, let's say, Travis Konecny, because I've seen that name brought up around this, love the player, ideal type of player for what the Red Wings need, not trading 13th overall for him.
The things that you said are sound and right. Like, that is how you make those deals. That's how you maximize your value. That's how you're building a team. You absolutely make the most of what you can. You don't get burned off of trading a pick. And like, if you're mad at who the Red Wings drafted in the first round in the past, at least they have a different player of some kind of value. If you're like should have been Wyatt Johnston over Sebastian Cossa kind of guy, imagine it was, instead of Wyatt Johnston, nobody, right? Like, of course you can go that route. But I think when you're looking at specific scenarios where you sometimes get frozen as a franchise who's in the position Detroit is in, which is, we need to find a different phrase other than mushy middle. We've said it a million times, but the mushy middle, or you can
just call it purgatory, because that feels more apt.
And I'm not saying they're there, but you're afraid of being there. Sometimes you got to buck a trend, and sometimes you have to take a risk. And I don't even know that I can confidently sit here and say, yeah, like, if you pick 13th overall, you're barreling towards purgatory. But if you trade it for Marco Rossi or Travis Konecny, or then you're going to, get the acceleration to get out of orbit and, into outer space. I don't know. But I wonder at different junctures for the Red Wings, whether it's a trade, whether it's a signing that's not the most technically sound, balanced plus EV move you can make as a GM. When do you just say, screw it? Like, you just got to do it. Let's just get a guy that helps it now. We'll figure it out down the road. We always talk. The cap is fake, especially as the NHL, and now with the jumping the next 3 years plus, the NHL is progressing. The cap is fake. Teams are figuring out more ways to work around it. Deal with it later. But you take a little bit of a hit on what the optimal value is and help the team now, because you still have that Dylan Larkin window that you are now facing head on.
Do you have that Dylan Larkin window?
You do. Yeah.
He's what, 28 years old?
No, we're making the same point. I'm saying, like, if you want to do anything here, you need to add help now.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the play. But and the one question you asked rhetorically, but I think there is a definitive answer to it, is, when do you buck the trend? When do you make a move like this? For me, there's a definitive line. When you make the playoffs, give the general manager a reason to do it. This team has not done that yet. They got very close last year, and had they made it, who knows what that would have changed this year. But this team we can say all we want about how good the young core is, how much the veterans disappointed, and go through the revisionist history on everything. They were not impressive this year. This is not a team that says, if we get David Pastrnak tomorrow, they're winning the Stanley Cup. They are much further away than that. And now, mind you, a David Pastrnak level player, you're trading 13th overall plus, and you do it all day because that type of talent doesn't come available. But 13th overall is not likely going to get you that level of talent. And that level of talent, looking around the league right now, isn't available. You are looking at a Konecny, Rossi tier player as is going to likely be available.
If you're talking pure first overall, if you're packaging it.
Yeah. It's, again, at the centerpiece of a bigger trade for a true superstar. Superstars are impossible to get in this league. You do whatever you have to do. Age, contract, timeline, be damned. If you can get that player, you get that player. Because even if it all goes to hell, that's the type of player where, well, a year and a half left on their contract, it hasn't worked for us. We can go trade him and get basically what we gave up for him back and just keep going. But yeah, I don't know. It's the catch-22. I'm not comfortable, and I wouldn't push all in by trading the 13th overall until I'm looking at a team where I go, yeah, they're only one or two pieces away from really being something. And I think they're still very far from that.
I think that makes a lot of sense, right? It's, you're looking at this team at the trade deadline. It's like, would you trade your first round pick at that moment to get this team in the playoffs? Obviously, the answer was no. They shouldn't be giving up big assets at the trade deadline. So why does that change now? Like, just because we're coming into the draft and we know they're picking 13th, why does that? It doesn't really change it for me. It's this team still is the team unless they have a massive overhaul plan, which would be very difficult to do. It's hard to make a lot of moves in the offseason to really overhaul a team. So why would or should the Red Wings trade the 13th overall pick now for a player when the team still is the team?
I mean, trade deadline's different because the prices are higher. You're right that it is effectively not too far of a position that's different, but I also think as the offseason comes, more things shake out. Was Marco Rossi available at the deadline? No. Are there rumors now of Marco Rossi in the Wild not exactly seeing eye to eye in terms of the fit there? Yeah. How much is substantiated there? It remains to be seen, but I think different things shake out. And the one thing I actually disagree with is, like, I understand fundamentally what you guys are saying about, yeah, make the playoffs first, deserve it first. I subscribe to that at the trade deadline. Absolutely. 100%, because I think it's like buying your kids a toy at the store, right? It's overpriced. You know they're going to ignore it after a week. But if they were good that week, if Hank scored the championship winning goal for his team and got it on video and we've all watched it 50,000 times, yeah, then he gets the yellow Gatorade from the machine and a toy from the store the next time he goes. But that's the trade deadline. The offseason is when you need to make those big overhauls, like you said, Evan, and you have to make those substantial moves. So you're right, Brad. This team wasn't impressive, especially to the year past. The fact that they were even close is more of a testament to how weak the second and even first wildcard spot is, more than what the Red Wings did. So help the team. The defense looked bad all year. The depth scoring looked bad all year. Why would you want that, crummy depth and crummy defense to go out there and try again, and then once they pull off a miracle, then they get help? For me, I'm like, no, you have to make fundamental changes now. You have Gavrikov in free agency. You have other guys in free agency. If you're lucky enough to land one of the big names, that's one way you can do it without costing anything except for your owner's money, which we all don't care about. But for trade assets, that's your backup for if you can't get the help through free agency, if you can't get the help through Danielson making the team or Mazur making the team in a super impressive way. So I don't want to wait to see this team make the wild card first and limp in. I want to help them now. And I'm not saying that the 13th pick being traded has to be how you do it, but I'm way more open to looking at it.
Well, here's the pushback from the optimistic standpoint on that.
Which you always hold, by the way.
Oh, yeah. The eternal optimist. That's me. They did only miss the playoffs by 5 points this year. Was that because it was a very bad year for the wildcard spots? Like you said, yes. But they weren't the Grand Canyon away from making it. Trading 13th overall for a Konecny absolutely helps them get into the playoffs next year. No doubt. Probably likely. But again, that's not the ultimate goal. The playoffs next year isn't what you're hoping for with 13th overall. It's a core piece that's going to win you a Stanley Cup. And if you're looking at the team as they are now, they're not close to that, which is circling back to my point. And if you get someone in their mid to late, or it'll probably be closer to late 20s, by the time you actually need them to be at their prime, they're well past it. They could still be good players. Whereas 13th overall, that player's got a long window ahead of them. And look at St. Louis, look at Washington. Like, you don't need to build up to 1 year. You need to have a solid foundation and a solid core to kick that can every year for a decade. And eventually all the pieces fall into place and you have that 1 year you get there. Or if you're Tampa or Pittsburgh, you get a bunch. And it's because you're foundationally solid and that core is exactly where you need it to be. And then every year you're just tweaking around the edges. And that's when you're looking to trade your first overall pick to help build around the edges. And the edges doesn't necessarily mean fourth line grinder. It could be a star level player. Where does the hole need to be filled by trading this pick and who is available at any given time? Because that's the other thing too right now. When you look around at who's available, it's not an impressive buyer's market in the trade market right now. There's not a lot of players I'm kicking the door down going, oh my God, we have to trade for them right now. Especially when you're coming into free agency and all that. And there are some names out there that are attractive. So I think there is some logic to the you have to kick that door down eventually. And why not now? But I think the confluence and the circumstances that are surrounding this specific moment just doesn't make sense to me to move that pick.
In my life, a lot of the times I get frozen because I want to do something perfect. And then I'm like, I don't start. I wait forever. I'm in the planning phase forever. And then I don't do it. That's something I have to work on constantly. And I just wonder if NHL teams who chase perfect rebuilds don't find themselves either paralyzed or, buffaloed. I don't know. There's no better word for it. It's an interesting debate. And I'm not saying I'm right in that Rossi has to be the answer, but that's the premise of why I push back. So let's talk about Rossi, because you're right that it's not a buyer's market, but there are names out there. There's no David Pastrnak is explicitly available kind of thing, but Marco Rossi is a name that's been out there. Is Minnesota necessarily thrilled with him? Rumored to be no. Is Marco Rossi necessarily thrilled with the fit and how things have gone there? Not necessarily the case. And so if there's a trade to be had, then Marco Rossi could potentially be an answer for that top six. No, had a year where some people say he wouldn't have performed his best, but that was still, 24 goals, 36 assists, 60-point season in just his second full year in the NHL. Marco Rossi we're very familiar with. We talked about him a lot the year he was drafted as a potential Red Wings pick. Would he be a guy that the Red Wings would be interested in? The Red Wings roster has a hole in the top six that ideally you're filling with a talented forward who is young and big and plays physical and hard and is also producing a good amount. Marco Rossi is not that. He's small. He's about your size, Brad. But he's a talented player and he's already producing and he's 23 years old. He'll be 24 at the start of next season. That's a lot of boxes checked. Not all of them, but a lot of them. 60-point forward at a minimum. That's a fit.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about Marco Rossi. He is older than Lucas Raymond, for reference, only by a year. He's only had the one season north of 40 points, and obviously it was 60, so it's substantial, but back-to-back 20-goal seasons. Again, I'm not a huge subscriber to this being a problem, but NHL teams are. It's another small forward. It's another not physical forward. I do like Rossi's compete. I don't think that's an issue for him. He's got that same level of I don't know what you want to call it, little brother brat energy that Lucas Raymond has.
Yeah.
Which is annoying to play against.
I don't think he plays as small as he is.
No, he absolutely doesn't. I would have all the time in the world for Marco Rossi. I don't think 13th overall for Marco Rossi, but I think there are trade packages the Red Wings could put together that would be enticing to Minnesota. And just between all their prospects, Minnesota, because Minnesota's one of those teams now too. Like, how much futures do they want? They're in it now.
And they got
Right.
that $15 million in dead cap coming off this year, so they are looking to hit the gas.
They're going to be aggressive, and Kaprizov's coming up on a contract, so they have value in his contract right now.
And that's going to Detroit, obviously.
Yeah.
So
And they need to, like, if they regress here, that's not doing a good selling job to keep him around. So, like, if you throw together a package of one of your goalie prospects, a top prospect, and a good pick, is Minnesota going to want to do that? From a value standpoint, obviously, yes. But none of them are helping them in probably the next couple years, at least not to the level they would need. So taking our Detroit out of it and looking at it from the Minnesota standpoint, I don't think that works for them. And then you look at what could the Red Wings give off the roster for him. Nothing that we would be willing to give up.
nothing that we would be willing to give up. But how often do we have conversations about other teams' players and you're not watching those players for 82 games? You're like, oh, wow, that NHL player right now, aged 24 to 31, would be a big help to the Red Wings. And then you see how the opposing team's fans talk about him. Like, look at the Winnipeg Jets fans when Pionk signed his extension. They were pissed. They were really pissed. I mean, they might be right to be. Well, it remains to be seen. But you're also thinking about all the minutes that he played in that OT winner to win the series. What I'm saying is Michael Rasmussen checks a lot of boxes for GMs who
That's
don't.
where you're going.
It's where I'm going to go every time because it's the easy answer. But
We keep pumping him up. Eventually, somebody will go, you know what?
The Tanner Jeannot trade was the worst thing to happen to the NHL because we've seen it happen once, and you're like, a guy who's big, a guy who can presumably have offense, and a guy who is really well loved in the room and is known to be a heart and soul player. Michael Rasmussen has never turned into the offensive producer that the Red Wings have hoped that he would be. There's some there. Michael Rasmussen's sellable. He's sellable in my mind to the right GM at the right time. Are you going to get a Tanner Jeannot return? You shouldn't.
You're not getting Marco Rossi, I can tell you that.
No, but as a piece, Brad, as a piece of it.
That could help, but again, that's still a pretty substantial downgrade for Minnesota. And even if you're right that they view Rasmussen higher than any Red Wings fan with eyeballs, like, you're still adding futures, which is fine. That's better than nothing. Then that's your theory is probably the most logical to how this could happen. But how much do you have to add to a Michael Rasmussen to get a Marco Rossi? Because I feel like it's still pretty substantial.
Yeah, he's not even close to being the central piece there.
No,
It would be, I think Minnesota says, let's just, keep it easy. We'll switch Marco for Marco.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's
no,
where
Jeff-
they would be going.
No,
they're not.
That's where they start.
If you think they're interested in Michael Rasmussen, you are high.
Okay, so here's the one.
Maybe.
Which it was.
So
My move would have gone a lot better.
So here's where you could maybe sell Minnesota on futures. The guy who's ready to step into the NHL any day now, but hasn't got there yet. So if they call you and you go 1-for-1 Nate Danielson.
Yeah, you do it. It's a certainty, right? Like we saw Vegas make these types of trades a la Peyton Krebs, right? Like they took the certainty in that was the Eichel trade, right? And let Buffalo deal with the uncertainty in Krebs, and it worked out for them. Not going to say this is the exact same scenario, but you're getting a proven commodity. I know Nate Danielson has impressed in both of his times in preseason, but there's no certainty he turns it on at the NHL level, right? So all in all, I think you have to be very certain on what you're doing and that you're making a calculated guess on these two players and their potential. That's certainly interesting.
So the two follow-ups I have to that, because I think, and why I brought it up, I think Danielson's that uncomfortable line where you
Which you have to get. You have to feel uncomfortable.
You have to be uncomfortable. I don't think Rossi's a certainty either. He's more of a certainty because we've seen him do it at the NHL level, but it's only 1 year and he's not as young as your brain's telling you he is right now. He's not a prospect anymore. He's far from it. Like, he's in his mid-20s for all intents and purposes. And again, he's going to be due up a contract, and Danielson's still got the ELC. How much does that factor in, et cetera, et cetera? And, you know, instead of the evil, the good you know versus the good you don't, right? How comfortable are you with your guy versus the other guy? I would lean to keep Danielson, but I'm like, this is like a 55-45 in my head, which is why I think we're in the right ballpark there.
That value level, yeah. And it's a good point about Rossi. He does need a contract, and so you have to pay him too. So you don't get the ELC benefit, which is what you referenced off the top. But if you're a team that's like, hey, I have Dylan Larkin now, he still has some of his best-ish years here, but not forever of them, then yeah, you have to start to feel uncomfortable if you want to say, hey, Dylan, we're going to compete with you as captain, as our first-line center, not as, you know, your skills and abilities start to wane a little bit, and you have to adjust the way you play, and the way you play at 33 is not going to be the way you play at 28 kind of thing. So uncomfortable is the space that you have to get to. I like Marco Rossi as a fit. I know you're right about the mid-20s thing. You know, you'd be 24 at the start of the season, sure, but again, like 24, we're also talking about guys who are 28, 29, 30 in free agency. So it is what it is. Another aspect of this is we always preach to people, yeah, the first round picks are all great and they've gone really well so far, but statistically speaking, not just one, but multiple of them won't hit. The Casper, you know, certainty that we know already, that's fantastic. Edvinsson coming in and being a guy right away, that's fantastic. Between MBN, Danielson, Kosa, as Sandin Pellikka, as these picks go on, there's going to be guys who turn into nothing.
Yeah, but we hit that quota between 2015 and 2018 when all of them.
Yeah, I wish if we hit quotas, if hitting quotas was the issue here, we would have won 10 draft lotteries.
Yeah, if like 25% of first round picks don't work out the way you want it, we still got like another 3-4 years where we're going to be good.
Yeah. I think all of this, the theme of all of this is I'm just like, just start doing stuff, you know? Is it smart? No, but I'm delirious from the move and I haven't slept a lot in the past 4 days, and just start doing stuff.
Got to get away from the clearance rack. You got to go get the name brand apparel now.
In free agency where you don't have to give up assets.
Except, okay, Brad, except for the years and the age and the cost control that you always talk about.
The cap's not real. I'm more concerned about the value you lose in terms of players and prospects that are going to play for your team than I am the cap space, because the cap's not real.
This is like a political race. He's just borrowing the best parts of my platform when it's convenient for him. We are going to take a quick break here, and when we're back, more to come on the Red Wings, the NHL. Back after this. Technology was supposed to make our lives easier, so why does it feel like there's less time than ever? Between work, life, keeping tabs on how far down in the draft lottery Detroit's moving and what prospect they're going to pick at 13, figuring out what to eat becomes an afterthought. That's why we've been using Tempo, our new go-to for fast and fresh meals that don't make you feel like you just gave up on adulthood. Tempo is a weekly delivery service that delivers chef-crafted meals from a dietitian-approved menu fresh to your door. You pick from over 20 options each week, and every single one cooks in just 3 minutes, which is faster than most offside reviews. We especially love the tomato Asiago chicken. That one hit way above replacement level. And the tangy Baja citrus salmon and rice tasted like an actual home-cooked meal in just 3 minutes. No joke. Tempo serves up fast, feel-good, single-serving meals that are crafted to cook in just 3 minutes so you can eat well without sacrificing taste or convenience. They're made with real ingredients, are perfectly portioned, and actually make it easy to eat healthy without overthinking it, even during recording days or late-night post-game edits. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. Welcome back. I didn't say at the top of the show, we were too busy talking about the new studio. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there who are listening. If you are lucky enough to be able to do so, call your mothers. I preempted your joke this year, Brad. Bastard.
I will find a way to ruin every holiday.
I know you will. Okay, NHL, what do we want to start with? Actually, before we get into playoffs, the Utah Mammoth is official, as are the logos and the jerseys. Impressions, thoughts, what do you think? How'd they do?
Okay, I'm going to get ahead of everything. Mammoths, while grammatically correct, sounds stupid, so I'm happy they went with Mammoth.
Like the Flyers, right? Like that's dumb. And the Leafs. And the Habs.
Yeah, but they at least sound.
And the Knights.
No, it's just the sound.
And the Sharks.
Mammoths. It's just the
And the Red Wings.
The mouth noises.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Minnesota Wilds. Tampa Bay Lightnings.
It's better that way. The Utah Mammoth. I agree.
Yeah,
I like the non-plural names.
Yep. I wish they would have incorporated purple, but we knew with the jerseys last year that wasn't happening. I think the logo, while feeling fairly generic, looks really sick, and the details are cool.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've seen the NHL Creative Team in the video games being referenced with a lot, and I absolutely get that vibe, but it still looks good. I think they got it right with the options they had available to them. I like the look of it. I like the name. I like the logo. It's not one of the top tier name, logo, jersey combinations in the NHL, but it's also not bottom half either.
I like the name better than the Golden Knights.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I agree. I fully understand when people are like, this looks like a creative team logo. You're not wrong. It is kind of like every generic team, like mean side profile animal head with shadows as accent pieces. Sure. I think it looks cool. I love the Utah state outline embedded in there. The U of the tusk. Like, I think there's a lot of those small details that you appreciate. It annoys me that the blue is so close to what Seattle just did, and the black and the white. Like, it's just a bit boring. I think the NHL should give discounts to expansion franchises that actually pick different colors. But besides that, I'm happy they didn't stick with Hockey Club. I was never a big Utah HC guy. I laughed when it was a different league, when it was the Washington football team. I'm like, haha, they should keep that. And then it came to the NHL. I was like, wait, no, that's stupid. No. They have the Utah down across the chest. Like, I understand the teams who have the history of that, and it looked like the New York Rangers. That is iconic. But when teams do that as their permanent jerseys and they have no history of that, I'm like, it's a little bit of a faux pas for me. So all in all, could have gone a lot worse. I like him.
It does nothing for me, really. You know, they do the announcement, you see it, you're just like, okay. It doesn't feel like there was a stroke of genius there where they came up with something super creative, super interesting. I like all the details you guys mentioned in the logo. It just, every single person on the golf course right now is wearing those shades of blue. It's very popular
right now.
I'm wearing part of it right now. I would know. It does nothing for me. I was really hoping that they would go for something a little bit more creative, maybe a little bit more, I don't know if edgy's the word, but you know,
they could have gone with the Soakers. That would have been edgy.
That would have been edgy. Yeah.
Could you imagine the logo on that one?
That's for the Patreon exclusive.
They actually would just let the fans write in and submit it. Yeah. There's actually subreddits for that.
Oh, yeah. It didn't take long, huh?
But for an ownership group that is trying to do different things and new things in the NHL and be this sort of like modern age ownership, it just felt a little flat for me. So, you know, if I was putting this in a tier list, it would not be in the S or the A or the B tier. It kind of just does nothing for me. I don't know if their official slogan is Tusks Up, but I think that's amazing if it is. So I don't know. I'm just glad it's not in the Atlantic and I have to think about it more than I really do. I wouldn't say it's one of the stronger ones out of the expansion teams in recent memory.
That's done. We didn't get any of the fun names, but we got one. I guess that's, I don't know, some people hate it, but could be way worse at the very least. All right, let's get into actual hockey. These playoffs, man.
Mikko Rantanen. It's his world. We're just living in it.
And he could have not done what he did today, and we still would have had the same reaction to these playoffs. Because last night I blinked, and the Oilers lost the game. As at the buzzer. Nuts. Let's start with Rantanen, what he's doing with Dallas, who takes a 2-1 series lead.
He's got roughly 52 points in the last 4 periods of hockey, it feels like. He is such an interesting player to me because, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, he plays hockey like he looks like he's bored with it.
Yes.
He's like the elite version of Anthony Mantha.
Yes. Absolutely, yes.
God, I didn't need that, Evan. I really didn't.
He just has a moment every game where he's like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this one. I'm just going to shovel in 3-4 points and just make sure we don't have to go to overtime today.
Oh, yeah, I am better than everyone else on the ice.
Yeah.
That was the big complaint with Avs fans. They were like, yeah, he sometimes looks bored out there in midseason, like game 45 kind of thing. He wasn't out there giving it his all, which is very reminiscent of Anthony Mantha, or they felt like that. And then the game would end and you'd look and you'd be like, oh, Mikko Rantanen had 3 points or scored the game winner or whatever. He doesn't always play like this, but he plays like a bull moose and he knows he's better than everyone and he is talented and he can make plays happen in different ways. It's almost like he plays like a midfielder, right? Like he's conserving his energy, which is not how you play hockey. Like it's got to drive coaches nuts. But I don't know, like he has well shaken off any of the whole McKinnon, Makar, Merchant things. Like he can take over a game and has done it.
Well, Evan, what was the stat you told me before we started recording? Because that was absolutely nuts to me. Like for the regular season, that stat would have been insane. For the playoffs is another level.
And especially for a team like Dallas, that's so deep. I think the stat was something like Mikko Rantanen factored in on 14 straight goals for Dallas, whether it be he scored it or had an assist. 14 in a row.
And that's going through like game 5, 6, 7 of a playoff series into the next round.
That series being against his former team.
It also helped that he had 2 hat tricks. So like that.
Yeah.
14's maybe not that impressive anymore.
Yeah, you know, those hat tricks, what did he even do for those?
Well,
Just
that's only
remove those
6
from
of
the count.
them. The other 8 had to have come from somewhere.
Oh, big man who could do 2 times 3 real fast.
It wasn't
Brag about
fast. I had to double, triple check.
That was in our show notes. You're looking at Rantanen and you're like, you're no longer just worried about Ottinger or, I mean, Robertson and Heiskanen being injured, especially to start the playoffs. Everyone was counting them out. You now have a Rantanen to look at. And then Avs fans who are watching this happen from the golf course have to be fuming right now.
They didn't even get to the golf course for the time to process it. That game 7, he pops off for 3. Like you're sitting there in front of your TV or in the stands, or for the players in the locker room wondering what the hell just happened.
I know. Speaking of what the hell just happened, Vegas, Edmonton. That game due to go to overtime. Smith coming down the left side. Doesn't have an angle. Doesn't have a shot. Skinner decides to, pull out the map from his backpack, go on a Dora the Explorer adventure way out of his net. Leon Draisaitl is there to bang home the cross crease pass into his own net. That guy's he's just a goal scorer, he just makes plays happen. And you joke here because Leon Draisaitl is like one of, if not the best player in the world on any given night. But he's the one to tip in a puck that's going across the crease, which is well vacated because Skinner's not even in the frame of the still image at that point. Smith doesn't have an angle, just fires it across, and Draisaitl tips it in, and the Golden Knights win at the buzzer to take that series to 2-1 and bring back, some of the home ice that they lost to Edmonton in the first 2 games.
First of all, there's a golden buzzer joke in there somewhere that you just skated right past, but we'll let that go. Second, my favorite part about this all, when a goalie comes that far out of the crease, you understand you're susceptible to anything that happens behind you, if it's a pass, a rebound, whatever. He didn't even get in front of the puck. It still got past him. Like, why Edmonton's... I understand the Edmonton coach is in a bad spot because they never addressed the goaltending position. Why was Stuart Skinner in that game? Like, what is the thought process there?
They don't have any good options.
Calvin Pickard must be hurt. He's not a good option, but he was the better option who had won at that point going into that game 6 straight playoff games.
He probably had never even started 6 straight games.
And apparently there was a report, there's no intention of starting him next game either. To be fair, he might be nursing something and they're not just saying anything. And they have no choice. But at what point do you go to Olivier Rodrigue instead of Stuart Skinner? Because time and time again, the Oilers win in spite of him, not because of him when they do win. But there's a lot of games they do lose because of him. I don't want to say it's Groundhog Day because, like I said, at least they did try Calvin Pickard, but a little bit of that vibe.
Wonder what Stuart Skinner's WAR rating is.
Does
it go that low?
It's low, man. And I think the only reason he's not at the bottom of that chart is because for a while there, Connor Hellebuck, before he pitched a fantastic game, was right at the bottom. But like, this is how Edmonton's going to be. You're not going to reshape your roster. You're going to lose games because of your goaltending, and you're going to win games because you have 2 cheat codes on your team plus other talented players, and you're going to outscore your goaltending issues. Oh, and if you don't have goaltending issues that game, you have your defenseman doing God knows what. You talk about Stuart Skinner not being in the frame. Why is Leon Draisaitl the one back there? Like, you have so much to defeat, and you unfortunately also you can't do anything about that now in the playoffs. But fortunately for you, you have the best offensive weapons you could ever hope to have on your team. It's just how Edmonton is. I don't know what they're going to do to fix that in the offseason, but it's not going to be now. So if they win the cup, it's going to be, defense wins championships. They're sticking both middle fingers at that phrase. If they do this and win the cup, it's not going to be through defense.
Corey Perry's looks so good on that top line. That pass he made to Connor McDavid off the wall in stride, and then he just destroyed Jack Eichel's confidence and promotability going forward. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Edmonton too. If their depth in goaltending doesn't at least attempt to tread water, it's going to be really tough against Vegas.
Their depth has actually been good these playoffs. Like good, their bottom 6 is outscoring the opposition when they're on the ice. When were you ever think you were going to say that about the Edmonton Oilers? And yet there's still no certainty around them with that happening. And you have the 2 nuclear weapons. And just so many predictable issues are arising for this team still.
What year is it where we're talking about Corey Perry being that good? That's annoying. All right, moving over to the East. The Leafs were 1 overtime away from going up 3-0 in the series against Florida. They're playing right now, but that series is 2-1 thanks to Brad Marchand. This is the Barney being kicked out of the bar meme, and then he shows up behind him. They kicked out Brad Marchand with the Bruins logo, and then he shows up behind the Leafs with the Panthers logo. Brad Marchand scores the OT winner, keeps the Panthers alive in that series. By the time you're listening, you'll know the result of Game 4 here, but that series has been fun. The other series in the East, I'm honestly like the Carolina going up 2-1 on Washington. It's not boring, but does not hold a candle to the other 3 for me so far.
I could not tell you a thing that's happened in the Washington-Carolina series. So yeah, that about sums that up well.
Yeah. But Toronto, Florida, man, Toronto's like, I get they lost that game, but Toronto doesn't look bad.
They look calm.
Yes.
Which is something they've never looked in the playoffs, which sucks.
Yeah, I don't like that. But I did say to you, like, I have a feeling this year, man. I have a feeling that they're going to make more of a run of it than they usually do.
I can't remember if we talked about it before on the podcast or if I was just talking to a friend about this, but this was the Leafs' best chance. Now, not everything that they needed to happen has come to fruition, but Ottawa was the first favorable first-round matchup they've had in a while. That was a very winnable series, and they inevitably won it. There was hope that Tampa and Florida were just going to beat the hell out of each other so that by the time they got to Toronto, they were a little more downtrodden than obviously ended up happening. I don't think Carolina or Washington scares anybody. So if you get through Florida, you're not all that worried going into the conference finals.
Which feels like a mistake because boring doesn't mean bad. Like Carolina could go in, for example, if they win and just...
But it's not even that they're boring. I just don't think they're anything special. Like I don't think they're at the Toronto, Florida level. I don't think they're at the Vegas, Edmonton, Dallas level. I don't even think they're at the Winnipeg level. And now that I've said that, congrats on your Stanley Cup, Carolina. But if that's your path to the Cup final, and then obviously whoever comes out of the West is going to have gone through a war just like anybody who comes out of the East, the Leafs are not going to get a better path. This is as good as it gets. And it's never easy. Obviously, you still got to get through Florida, and you still got to get through Carolina, and then you got to get through one of the powerhouses in the West. But this is it. This is the best you're going to get. Everybody around you is going to get better. Everybody's going to understand their mistakes. You're not getting this again. So if they don't do it this year, I mean, Tavares might not be back. Marner might be back.
They're running out of goalies.
Yeah. So
although their goaltending is somehow better this year than they ever has been. So that's weird.
if you have 2 goalies that can capably stop a puck, you only need one of them to get hot. And they had one, and then he got hurt in the most Leafs fashion possible.
Well, it's not been boring so far. We talked about one boring series of 4. And even then, some people might be mad for saying it's boring too. So, all right, let's get over to something that is exciting for Brad. Cole Reschny is our prospect profile for this episode. O'Brien was your other guy in this draft who I know you're really banging the drum for, but he's probably going too high up. And so Cole Reschny does feel more of the prototypical Brad Crisco. This is the guy who is likely to be there, and I think he's worth the risk pick. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing that, Brad. But Cole Reschny out of Victoria, potential center option, super productive player, is, not off the radar for people, but is maybe, I don't want to call him small, but that small skilled forward archetype is where people are going to assign him. So who's Cole Reschny? Is he worth it at 13th overall? Would that be a reach? And could this be a, home run swing for Detroit?
Well, I don't think it'd be considered a reach. Most draft boards have him in the 15 to 20 range right now, so that's not terribly far outside of 13. I'm on record numerous times on the podcast saying I think this is the year the Red Wings need to swing. This is not the safe pick year. You have a stocked cupboard. You have a ton of prospects. Go try and find an impact player. Find a guy who might not just be a good second line player or second pairing. Find someone with first line upside. Understanding that even everybody I'm talking about in this range, including Reschny, is not likely ever going to be a first line player. That's just the reality of the draft. But outside of the sub 6 foot forward, there is nothing to dislike about this guy's game. He plays fast. He's a good skater. He's ultra competitive. 200-foot game. Red Wings love the intangibles. He has them. Unbelievably good playmaker, but can still score goals. He can come at you in multi-dimensions when attacking offensively. He had a very slow start to the season, and there are reports that his coaches were disappointed in him at the beginning of the year in September, October, November. He wasn't playing to his standard, and he was telling reporters, I didn't like the way I was playing. It wasn't good. So what did he do? Been arguably one of the best players in the entire CHL since then. Went on an absolute tear the second half. I think he crept up on 100 points. I don't think he hit it, but he got close despite the slow start. As a 17-year-old, he's not a late birthday. Had a good, whatever you want to call that prospect series they were doing when the States came down. Had a phenomenal playoffs for Victoria. Like, I don't know much about the WHL in terms of standings and how teams should sit, but nobody gave Victoria much of a chance in the playoffs. And he was the driving force on that team, brought them to the second round, and gave Spokane, who's in the finals right now, a hell of a fight. And then went to the U18s and was one of Canada's best players there. I think he even scored a goal in, the quarterfinals or the semifinals against Czechia to advance Canada. I have my opinions on Cole Reschny, and I watch him play, and I like what I see. I look at the stats. I like what I see. But even if you don't trust my dumbass with prospects, every coach he's played for this year has put him in a prominent role despite being a 17-year-old because he is that damn good. Victoria leaned on him. They leaned him on the U18s. Prospect series, they leaned on him. This is a guy coaches trust, and he puts up stats.
Yeah.
Like I said, outside of the sub 6 foot, I don't see why he is this low on rankings. This guy, for me, is a top 10 prospect in this draft all day.
The part that has him low is, I think, also the part that gave me and a lot of people pause on him is if you're talking about a prospect in a league where you should be producing a ton at the start of the season, saying like the coaches are disappointed in him and he's saying, I'm disappointed in my game. That's a red flag, whether you believe it's a flag now or not. That's still a big red flag in his development. So you have to be sure if you're taking this kid that that's a one-off and just part of his development and not, a feature or something baked into his DNA, and you're going to run into the same thing when he takes the next step, because it's going to get hard again at the next step, because that's the thing I see there. Because all the aspects of his game that you talked about, the compete, the skill, the playmaking, the speed, like it's there. You see it. He's a pretty well-rounded player who's doing a lot. He's not just trusted offensively and not just by Victoria and at the Hlinka and everything else. Like he's on the PK. Like he does everything up and down the ice and has demonstrated that ability really well. But do you believe he can do that at the next level is why I think people have pause. And there's nothing that's going to give GMs and scouts and coaches more pause than the feedback from their peers at the level where these kids are coming from. And that's the way things should be. And if you have guys on the record saying, yeah, we were disappointed in him at the start of the year, that's normal. That's human. Like the guys who have been bad in their progress and turned into superstars in the NHL, but you got to be sure that this isn't part of who the kid is. I'm on Brad's side of this, is the end of all this. I do really like the player, and I think he could be an exciting pick if he's there, because I don't necessarily think you're always going to get that level of skill, potentially at 13 if he's there. But I don't think it's nothing as to why people have him lower.
One thing I will use as kind of my own self-defense by what I'm seeing and what I believe is the last time I really had, and I can narrow this down, an undersized forward in this range well above the consensus was also a small forward with a similar description, similar reasons that people didn't draft him higher, and that was Logan Stankoven.
Yeah.
I was very high on Stankoven in his draft year, and I'm getting a lot of the same vibes with Reschny.
What are you talking about? His draft team already gave up on him.
Here he is just scoring big goals in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's really suffering over there.
Yeah, he's tough go. He can't win them all. But yeah, and you look at those undersized forwards, what do they need to succeed at the NHL level? They need to be able to play with pace, and they need to be high compete. Check on both those guys. That's what I liked about Stankoven above all else, and that's what I like about Reschny above all else.
Yeah, I don't really see a whole lot of flaws in his game, and I don't want to, paint the draft with a broad stroke, but you don't really get the chance to have a slow start as a first round type level pick, right? Like those guys, Michael Mises, those guys aren't having slow starts.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a top 10 pick, there's no such thing as a slow start. And, there's probably a million counter arguments to what I just said, but that's sort of the reality of it. If you have a slow start, teams and scouts are going to narrow in on that and start asking questions. So that's probably why the consensus has some apprehensions. But, from that point onward, he's checked every single box and has excelled at every single position that he's earned. So, you can do all your digging and look into those things, and you rightfully should when it's going to be a 13th overall pick in the draft. And there's lots of great options as well as 13. Maybe not the upside, but there's definitely a lot of certainty there at 13 with other prospects. But I like what Cole Reschny does, and he comes out of the WHL, which is the closest thing the CHL has to, we'll say, pro-ready type prospects, type players, type league. So I could see teams taking him early, especially because he's a center. I think he just needs to add a little bit more weight. He's going to need to play, adjust his physical game as he adds that weight. I could absolutely see a team loving him and taking him earlier than, the 20s that a lot of the rankings have him at.
Brad, O'Brien's out of range for you, right?
Yeah, I think he's going top 6, 7 from everything I'm reading.
What do you think? Let's ask it this way. Where objectively do you think Cole Reschny should be ranked in this draft?
My rankings, off the top of my head, I think I have him 8 or 9.
So you think he's top 10 level pick potentially at pick 13 because you think he'll go lower?
Yep.
And
because to me, he would be found value if he slides to 13, but by the consensus, he'd be considered a bit of a reach.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is based on consensus and where we think things may be predicted to go, he would be at the top of your list of guys who are reasonably expected to be there.
Yes, I would. Again, based on everything I'm reading and listening to, it's extremely likely he's going to be there at 13.
Is there anyone even close in your rankings to him? Or is this like
that will be available?
Yeah. As likely to be available as Reschny is.
No, because everybody else I have in the range is appropriately ranked in the 10 to 14 range. So you would, with all those guys, you would assume there's a reasonable chance they're getting picked ahead of 13.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Just want to, I think Cole Reschny is going to be obviously a guy we're going to come back to a lot. It most likely this is going to turn out to be like the pet project of whenever we talk about guys who we want, at least Brad's bringing them up kind of thing. But I don't think this is out of nowhere. Like the kid's talent is real and it's a unique story. And whenever you're drafting this far down the order, you want to try to find your Larkin. You want to try to find your Pastrnak. You want to try to find those stars or superstars. And so you try to find talent that has an asterisk to it, which means a risk, but you take that risk and then you get rewarded for it. So that's Cole Reschny out of Victoria, WHL. I wonder how much we'll be talking about him. More to come. Final segment here on the Winged Wheel podcast coming after this break, but first, a word from the sponsors.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Again, if you want to support the show, the bonus episodes, the Discord, the giveaway, all of that and lots more. We're going to start with a question from Dallas Drake, and this is actually a good reminder because the question goes like this, or it's just a comment actually. It says, now that the Griffins were swept, the draft lottery is over, and bad contracts are still in the books, tell me everything is going to be okay. We had it in our show notes, but because everything's so crazy, we missed it. And rather than splice it in, you're just going to get this raw. The Griffins, very quickly here, swept by Texas, best of 5 series. They were down 2-0. They went in to the third period of game 3, up 4-1, end up losing multiple overtime, 5-4. That's their series done. And for a team that looked strong to start, it started to unravel and it never really came back for the Griffins this year. Culminated, sadly, but appropriately in the playoffs. Like that was a microcosm of it. So that's like it's a bad result and a bad sign for the Red Wings and their prospects in the system. The degree to that, I guess we'll talk about now, but no matter what, that blows. You expected more from these Griffins for sure.
Well, I'll try to find the positives I can take from their playoff run.
Yeah.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Yeah,
Still
there's that
looking.
one too.
Well, they're mimicking the Leafs, right? Being up 4-1, losing it in overtime. So, maybe there's
Maybe there's a Mitch Marner there somewhere.
Yeah.
That's a tough scene when there's Leaf comparisons.
Yeah.
Loving the Griffins organization and how they've turned it around. Absolutely. But you can't mince words here. Like that's a poor result. And that you lost Soderblom, you lost Shine for periods of time, you lost Watson for periods of time. Those are important guys for the team. Various other moves, of course, but you still expected better from that team. And I mean, the loudest parts of that for Red Wings fans are looking that Costa didn't look good down the stretch and had a really kind of disappointing last big chunk to his season, to the point where Steve Yzerman is saying in media, like as of right now, Sebastian Costa is not an NHLer next year, barring him, really turning it around. He talked about him going on a deep run. That's over. So for Costa to really change the organization's mind, it's really going to be contingent on how next offseason, preseason, training camp, et cetera, goes, because he's not well positioned now. So,
I got one. MBN's shot looked good.
Yeah. He turned on.
He got a few through there, at least a couple.
The takeaway is don't dwell on it and wait until the training camp. Hope for surprises. So, miserable topic. You wish you had, when the Red Wings suck, you wish you have at least a deep Griffins run. And I think that's what Hockeytown is banking on. So, yeah, everything will be okay, Dallas Drake, but not currently. The Jack Scientist says, my friend and I got into a debate about the best NHL goalie of all time. So I asked, what's your favorite stat or quality to measure goalies? Well, there's a stat to determine who the best goalie of all time is. And it's how much Dominik Hasek are you? And Dominik Hasek has a value of 1.0, which is the most you can have. So he is, therefore, the greatest goalie of all time.
Yeah, there's a lot of value to save percentage and goals saved above expected. I'm going to go with Hart trophies, so it's Dominik Hasek.
Era adjusted things, I think you have to do for goaltending because there's no position that's been more affected by era than the goaltending position.
Yep, so that puts Dominik Hasek.
Yeah, so
teams they played for, are you playing behind a stacked team or a mediocre team or a bad team? So that's Dominik Hasek. Save percentage, that's Dominik Hasek. Crazy shit per 60, that's Dominik Hasek. Tim Thomas got close.
Crazy shit on and off the ice.
Yep.
How long did he stay in a tree perch hunting a bear?
Tim Thomas, that could be months. You're going to have to narrow it down a bit.
Yeah. 155 Tater says Kyle Connor's favorite team growing up was the Red Wings. Favorite player was Datsuk. Said in an interview his NHL Mount Rushmore included Datsuk, Kane, and Yzerman. He and his wife are from Detroit. They just had a kid. His family is there. Last year of his contract playing in a Canadian market. Do you think we could have a DeBrincat situation coming soon?
God, I hope so.
That would be a gift. I've wanted Kyle Connor on the Red Wings for a long time. A lot of fans have wanted Kyle Connor on the Red Wings for a long time. I think he's the kind of guy where you waffle on, how much do you really trade for him? The guy just shows up and produces time in and time out. He would have been worth it to trade for before, not to say the Red Wings didn't try. Winnipeg obviously doesn't let a guy like that go for nothing. If you can get Kyle Connor free in free agency after next season, you do it. And you pay so much money.
Oh, 100%. We talked about the age thing earlier in the episode. That gets overdone by talent level, which, yeah, I think Kyle Connor crosses that threshold where he's so damn good. I don't care how old he is, because even when he's old, he's still going to be really good.
Chattanooga Wings guy says this isn't a Red Wings specific question, but do you guys think there's any legs behind Hellebuck's struggles coming from having to play so much in the regular season? To me, it just seems like he's gassed by how lazy his slides in the crease have been, but I'm not a goalie whisperer, so what do I know? Thanks, boys. I think the modern NHL has more than proven that you can't be playing goalies as much as Hellebuck has been playing and expect success. Sometimes you might get a freak of nature, but it's not even the physical toll, the mental toll too. You need to give the guy it's an insanely hard position.
Being that mentally on all the time is difficult. Now, we've seen goalies in the past play upwards of 70 games in a season and still be all right in the playoffs, so I'm not going to give him a pass because of it, but I think there probably is something to it.
I also think a big part of his game too, he's especially his worst games, it's shrinking in the moment. It's nervousness, it's anxiety. Last year's performance weighing on him obviously was a factor, especially in the first round. This isn't a confident guy that you see all season. So there's a big mental aspect to that too. And he might have done that with 30 games played or 50 games played or 80 games played this year.
And Winnipeg's defense hasn't looked particularly good in front of him. So it's like Brad said, I'm not going to absolve him of all the issues that Winnipeg is having on that concern, but there's a lot of things that are culminating right now to be the perfect storm for Connor Hellebuck.
Rasmussen and Petrie on a 2-0 breakaway says, not sure if any teams do this, but could you see a scenario where Marco Kasper is our 1C based on his 5-on-5 play, while Larkin plays 2C but gets the power play time? I mean, that is a very real possibility. I mean, people might cringe at the fact of, Marco Kasper is the Red Wings' best center option X years in the future, but I've seen worse 1Cs from NHL teams. It's really hard to get a true star level 1C.
Wasn't Eriksson Ek the number one center for Minnesota, and he just had Matt Boldy and Kaprizov on his line just going nuclear all around him, and he just needed to be a steady force?
And he's, I think, wildly underrated too, no pun intended. But who did Boston trot out last year, was it? Like
Zaka?
Pavel Zacha,
Yeah.
I think, was their 1C.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there that stretch in the Red Wings rebuild where Larkin was hurt and it was Franz Nielsen for a little while there?
Yeah, you didn't need to remind me, but yeah, we're all painfully aware of that one. So yeah, and like, if you think about, okay, Larkin isn't at the top of his game. How many years from now is that? I don't know, but how does his play taper off? Yeah, you're going to go down, you're going to get fewer minutes, be like a 1-2C, kind of swap there, and you're going to get the power play time. Larkin's production later in his career is primarily going to come from the power play more and more. Last one here from Seider. I barely know her. Says, now that you're in a new studio, does Evan get a last name?
No,
Still a man of mystery.
that's correct.
Maybe the next studio. We'll see how this setup changes. It might inspire you. You might get so relaxed. Maybe we start just doing the show in house coats.
I have many thoughts right now, but I'm saving it for the Patreon exclusive.
Deal.
If
Okay.
he gets any more comfortable, he's going to fall asleep midway between saying his first and last name.
If he's going to get any more comfortable, he's going to do that thing absentmindedly that he was talking about between ad breaks here, and everyone's going to get a full show for free. On that note, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Wingview podcast. I need to take some time to further prep the studio. Hopefully the sound is better. I don't know what the timing is on the studio being finished, but it won't be too long. It's not going to take all summer or anything. So thank you all for bearing with us. I know it's a bit of a choppy, awkward show as we adjust to a new space. Appreciate all of you tuning in. To the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast, thank you so much. And to our Patreon supporters, we could not do this without you. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to support the show. And if Patreon's not for you, but you still want to help us out, leave a rating wherever you get your podcast, the stars, the reviews, the thumbs up on YouTube, wherever, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Subscribe on any of those platforms or all of them. Tell a friend about the show. All of that really helps us a lot. To our name level sponsors on Patreon, we cannot do this without you. Arjun Shanker, Yves Birchhells on behalf of the Sarah Grant Foundation, Jennifer Morris, Akefer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Carl Brutina Nanalewski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hatrick Sandine Pelika, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, aka Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Baylor, Kalen Wood, Mark Hernandez, Matt Keeler, Marty, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Podgy713, RA, Richard Perkins, Roy Donk, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortlieb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Tiger McDougal, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Wings Fan in Chicago, Eyes Are Playing Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bowen of the Cheesebag Army, AA Ron, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Bellingham Masterballs, Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chris Flinsky, Clay Adams, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evan's Pet Iguana in a Trench Coat, Evan's Brown Pomeranian, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Hockey Fan, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Just Your Typical Champagne and Oyster Party, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Mitch Minier, Matt Keeler, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Hissin' Away, Roy Mudbutt, Ryan M, Sandy P, Right Hand D, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott. Yep, it's made with bits of real Panthers, so you know it's good. And your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll see you in the Patreon exclusive.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.